The year was 3167, and humanity had long since scattered across the stars like seeds in a cosmic wind. What began as a dispute over mining rights in the Proxima Centauri system had, over 27 grueling years, evolved into the bloodiest conflict in recorded history. The Planetary Alliance, a coalition of democratic worlds united under the principles of shared resources and mutual defense, had suffered catastrophic losses against the technologically superior Arathian Empire. Nova Pax had once been the jewel of the outer colonies, a verdant world of rolling plains and crystalline lakes. Now, its atmosphere was choked with debris from orbital bombardments, its cities reduced to rubble. The last evacuation was underway, and the colony Arc-72, originally designed as a generation ship for peaceful expansion, had been hastily converted into the final lifeboat for the remaining population. Commander Karavos stood at the bridge viewport, her weathered face illuminated by the flickering tactical displays. At 43, she had spent more than half her life fighting this war. Deep lines etched her forehead, and a jagged scar ran from her left temple to her jaw, a souvenir from the Battle of Titan's Rings. Her dark hair, once lustrous, was now streaked with gray and cut pragmatically short. "Final boarding protocol complete, Commander," announced Lieutenant Dax, her young navigation officer. "All refugees accounted for." Kara nodded, her eyes fixed on the dying planet below. "Civilian count?" 17,412, replied Rael Minas, her intelligence officer. Rael was thin and sharp-featured, with calculating eyes that seemed to process information faster than any computer. Her uniform bore no decorations. Intelligence officers rarely received public commendations, but her service record was impeccable. "That's 98% of the remaining population? The others?" She hesitated. "Chose to stay." Kara closed her eyes briefly. The ones who stayed behind were either too old, too sick, or too stubborn to leave their homes. They knew what awaited them when the Arathian forces arrived. "Engine status?" Kara asked, pushing aside the thought. Jun Park's voice crackled through the comm system. As chief engineer, he rarely left the engine room, especially during critical operations. Primary and secondary thrusters at 97% capacity. Warp drive primed and stable. "We're ready when you are, Commander." Jun had been a brilliant physicist before the war, designing the next generation of quantum drives. Now, he was holding together the Arc-72 with ingenuity and sheer force of will. His body bore the marks of his dedication, burns across his arms and chest from when he'd manually sealed a reactor breach during the evacuation of Europa Station. The physical wounds had healed, but the psychological ones manifested in the slight tremor in his hands and the haunted look that occasionally crossed his face. "Begin departure sequence," Kara ordered. "Standard acceleration. No need to tax the engines until we're clear of the gravity well." The massive ship shuddered as thrusters engaged. Nova Pax began to recede beneath them, the scarred surface gradually becoming smaller in the viewport. Kara felt the familiar hollow sensation in her stomach, not from the artificial gravity adjusting, but from the knowledge that they were abandoning yet another world to the Empire. "Calculating jump coordinates," Dax announced, his fingers dancing across the navigation console. "Estimating 4 hours until we reach safe jump distance." 4 hours. It seemed like an eternity, and an instant simultaneously. 4 hours until they could make the leap to faster-than-light travel, escaping into the vast emptiness between stars where even the Arathians couldn't follow immediately. "Commander," Rael's voice cut through Kara's thoughts, sharp with urgency. "I'm detecting an anomalous signal pattern." Kara turned instantly alert. "Source?" "Subspace frequency, heavily encrypted." Rael's hands moved with practiced precision over her console. It's an Arathian battle group communication. They've dispatched a light-speed-capable fleet to Nova Pax." "Estimated arrival?" Her voice faltered. 48 hours." The bridge fell silent, even at maximum acceleration. The Arc-72 needed at least 72 hours to reach a safe jump point. They were too massive, too cumbersome. A vessel designed to carry colonists and supplies. not to outrun warships. Options? Kara asked, her voice steady despite the ice forming in her veins. Her senior officers exchanged glances. There were no options. They couldn't fight. The ARC-72 had minimal defensive capabilities. They couldn't hide. Arathian sensors would detect a ship of this size easily. They couldn't run. The physics were implacable. There is yet one possibility, Rael said hesitantly, but you won't like it. I already don't like our situation. Lieutenant, speak freely. Rael glanced around the bridge, then lowered her voice. The ARC-72 was originally designated as a military support vessel before being converted for colonial transport. According to classified intelligence files, it was equipped with an experimental weapons system. Kara's expression hardened. What kind of weapons system? A quantum disruption cannon. Officially, it was decommissioned and removed when the ship was repurposed. Rael met Kara's gaze directly. Unofficially, the weapon core was merely deactivated and sealed behind bulkheads on the lower decks. Alliance High Command wanted a contingency. The revelation sent a chill through Kara. Quantum disruption technology was considered a weapon of mass destruction, capable of tearing apart the very fabric of space-time in a targeted area. Its use had been outlawed by both sides early in the conflict, not from moral considerations but from fear. Such weapons were too unpredictable, too dangerous even to their users. You're proposing we activate a banned weapon system? Kara asked, though she already knew the answer. I'm proposing we survive, Rael replied evenly, and possibly save 17,000 civilians in the process. Kara turned back to the viewport, watching as the last visible features of Nova Pax faded into a blue-green sphere. The weight of command had never felt heavier. Jun, she spoke into the comm. Meet me in my ready room. Rael, you too. Lieutenant Dax, you have the bridge. As the door to her private quarters slid shut behind them, Kara faced her two officers. Jun had arrived quickly, his uniform stained with engine oil, dark circles under his eyes from the exhaustion of preparing the ship for evacuation. Tell me everything about this weapon. Kara demanded. Capabilities, risks, chances of success. Jun exchanged a look with Rael. I was part of the original design team, he admitted. Before it was classified and taken from my department, the quantum disruption cannon operates by focusing enormous energy through an artificial quantum singularity. It creates a localized distortion in space-time that propagates outward at faster-than-light speeds. In practical terms? Kara pressed. In practical terms, it generates a wave that disrupts all complex energy patterns in its path. Shields, engines, weapons systems, communication arrays. At full power, it could theoretically disable every ship in the Arathian battle group simultaneously. Theoretically, Kara noted. Has it ever been tested at full capacity? Jun and Rael exchanged another glance. No. Jun admitted small-scale tests were promising, but the power requirements and containment issues prevented a full-scale demonstration. That's why it was officially abandoned. Kara paced the small confines of her ready room. And the risks? Significant, Jun said bluntly. The primary risk is containment failure. If the artificial singularity becomes unstable, it could expand beyond our control. Best case scenario, the ARC-72 is destroyed. Worst case, a cascading space-time rupture that could potentially affect the entire Nova Pax system. And what are the chances of success versus catastrophic failure? Jun hesitated. Based on the original simulations and the current state of our power systems, I'd estimate a 60% chance of successful deployment, 30% chance of system failure without catastrophic consequences, 10% chance of, well, disaster. Kara stopped pacing and faced her officers. Let me be clear about what we're discussing. We're considering activating an untested weapon of mass destruction, banned by interstellar convention, with a significant chance of killing everyone on the ship, including 17,000 civilians we're tasked with protecting. Yes, Commander, Rael said quietly. But the alternative is facing an Arathian battle group with no defenses. That's not a chance of death, it's a certainty. Silence fell over the room. Kara moved to her viewport, watching the stars, somewhere out there. Arathian warships were already accelerating toward them, their weapons primed. She thought of the refugees crowded into every available space on the ship, families who had already lost everything, clinging to their final hope of survival. "Jun," she said finally, "begin preparations to reactivate the cannon. Quietly. I don't want panic spreading among the civilians. Rail, I need everything you have on the approaching Arathian forces. Numbers, configurations, capabilities." "And if it comes to using the weapon?" Rail asked. Kara turned to face them, her expression resolute. "That will be my decision alone. And may whatever gods still watch over humanity forgive me if I make the wrong choice." The next 24 hours passed in a blur of activity and mounting tension. Jun assembled a small team of his most trusted engineers, briefing them only on a critical power system restoration project. They worked tirelessly, cutting through bulkheads and reconnecting long-dormant systems while the majority of the ship's population remained unaware of their true purpose. Kara maintained her regular command duties, inspecting refugee quarters and reassuring the Civilian Leadership Council that they were on schedule for a safe jump. Each lie felt like acid on her tongue, but panic would only make their situation worse. In her rare moments alone, doubt crept in like a shadow. The Alliance had fought this war on the principle that they were better than the Arathians, more humane, more ethical. Using a banned weapon of mass destruction would cross a line from which there might be no return. Yet what good were principles if everyone who held them was dead? By the 36-hour mark, Jun reported that the cannon was nearly operational. Power conduits had been rerouted, the artificial singularity chamber had been inspected and reinforced, and the targeting systems were being calibrated. "We've had to improvise in several key areas," he admitted, his voice strained with exhaustion over the comm. The original design called for dedicated power relays that were removed during the conversion. We're routing through secondary systems, which adds another level of instability. "What does that mean for our chances?" Kara asked. "Our margin for error is narrower. I'd revise the probability of catastrophic failure upward to 15%. Kara closed her eyes briefly. "Understood. Continue." On the bridge, Rael had been continuously monitoring the approaching Arathian force. "They're moving faster than initially calculated," she reported grimly. "Revised arrival estimate, 42 hours from initial detection. That gives us just 6 more hours." The news sent a fresh wave of tension through the command staff. 6 hours until they faced an overwhelming enemy force. "How many ships?" Kara asked. 57, Rael replied, "including 3 dreadnoughts, 12 heavy cruisers, and various support vessels. It's the largest battle group they've deployed in this sector." The implications were clear. The Arathians weren't just sending a force to mop up the last resistance on Nova Pax. They were sending enough firepower to ensure nothing survived. As the deadline approached, the atmosphere on the bridge grew increasingly tense. Junior officers cast nervous glances at each other when they thought Kara wasn't looking. They knew something was wrong. The ship's course hadn't changed, and they were still well within range of Arathian sensors. 4 hours before the estimated enemy arrival, Jun called from the lower decks. "The cannon is operational," he reported, his voice tight with tension. "But there's a problem. The power distribution system is showing fluctuations. We need to manually stabilize the flow during firing sequence, which means someone has to be in the chamber during activation." Kara finished for him. "That's a suicide mission. Jun—" "Not necessarily," he countered. "With proper shielding, and if the sequence completes as designed, there's a chance of survival. I'll do it myself." "Absolutely not," Kara said firmly. "I need you coordinating from engineering. Who's your best power systems specialist?" A pause. "Lieutenant Yara," Jun said reluctantly. "But Commander, I can't ask—" "You're not asking, I am." Kara's tone brooked no argument. "Brief Lieutenant Yara on what needs to be done. Make the survival chances clear." "Yes, Commander." As Kara ended the communication, she became aware of Rael watching her intently from across the bridge. "Something to say, Lieutenant?" Kara asked. Permission to speak privately, Commander. They moved to the small tactical alcove adjacent to the main bridge. Once they were alone, Rael's professional facade cracked slightly. "We're really doing this," she said, not quite a question. "We're preparing for all contingencies," Kara replied carefully. "You're preparing to use a weapon that could kill everyone on this ship." Rael countered, "Including thousands of civilians who have no idea what's happening." "Would you prefer I inform them that we're about to face an Arathian battle group with no hope of escape or defense?" Kara asked sharply. "Should I tell the children in the cargo holds that they'll be dead or captured within hours?" "No, but—" Rael hesitated. "What if there's another way? What if we could negotiate? The Arathians have occasionally granted mercy to civilian transports." "When it suited their propaganda purposes," Kara said bitterly. "And even then, those civilians ended up in labor camps. You know what happens in those camps." "Rael, death would be kinder." Rael fell silent, her internal conflict visible on her face. She had spent years intercepting and decrypting Arathian communications, including reports from their rehabilitation centers. The atrocities documented in those reports still haunted her dreams. "I understand the moral calculus," she said finally. "But activating this weapon, it crosses a line we've always maintained we wouldn't cross. It makes us no better than them." "Perhaps," Kara admitted. "But I'd rather be alive and grappling with that moral question than dead with my principles intact. And more importantly, I'd rather those 17,000 civilians had the same opportunity." Before Rael could respond, an alarm blared through the ship. Both officers rushed back to the main bridge. "Multiple contacts," Lieutenant Dax called out, his young face pale with shock. "Arathian signatures, bearing 180 Mark 43. "That's impossible," Rael muttered, rushing to her station. "They can't be here yet." But the tactical display told a different story. A smaller advance force, 5 ships, including a heavy cruiser, had arrived ahead of the main battle group. They must have dispatched a faster scout force when they detected our departure. Kara realized. Tactical status? "They're moving to intercept." The weapons officer reported, "Range, 300,000 kilometers and closing rapidly. They'll be within weapons range in 17 minutes. 17 minutes. Not even enough time for proper evacuation to escape pods. Not that those would offer any real hope against Arathian hunters. Kara's decision crystallized in that moment. Sound general quarters. All hands to battle stations. As klaxons wailed throughout the ship, Kara opened a direct channel to engineering. "Jun, we need the cannon now. Advance force has arrived." "We're not ready." Jun's voice was strained with panic. "The stabilization protocols—" "We don't have time." Kara cut him off. "How soon can you fire?" A moment of silence, presumably as Jun calculated. 15 minutes minimum to bring the singularity to critical mass. But, Commander, without proper stabilization. "The Arathians will be in weapons range in 17 minutes, Kara said flatly. "Make it work, Jun." She closed the channel before he could protest further and turned to Rael. "Inform the Civilian Leadership Council of our situation. No details about the weapon, just that we're preparing to defend the ship." As Rael hurried to comply, Kara opened a ship-wide channel. "Attention all personnel. This is Commander Voss. We have encountered an Arathian advance force and are preparing defensive measures. All civilians are to remain in their assigned areas. All military personnel report to battle stations immediately. This is not a drill." She closed the channel and turned to Lieutenant Dax. "Adjust course to heading 270 Mark 15. Put as much distance between us and them as possible. Every minute counts now." The massive ship groaned as its thrusters fired at maximum capacity, changing vector away from the approaching Arathian vessels. On the tactical display, the enemy ships adjusted their course accordingly, maintaining their intercept trajectory. "They're hailing us!" the communications officer announced. "Ignore it," Kara ordered. "They're only interested in surrender, and that's not an option." The next 15 minutes were the longest of Kara's life. The bridge crew worked with grim efficiency, making what minor preparations they could for a battle they couldn't hope to win conventionally. Emergency systems were brought online. Damage control teams were dispatched to critical areas, and the handful of point defense turrets the ARC-72 still possessed were powered up. Kara watched the tactical display with growing tension as the distance between the ships steadily decreased. The Arathian vessels had formed a standard pursuit formation, spreading out to prevent any potential escape vector. 3 minutes to weapons range, the tactical officer announced. Kara opened the channel to engineering again. Jun, status? Singularity is approaching critical mass, he reported, his voice tight with concentration. Power fluctuations are still problematic. Lieutenant Yara is in position at the manual stabilization controls. Can you fire? In approximately 2 minutes. But, Commander, our targeting systems are showing inconsistencies. We can't guarantee precision. We don't need precision, Kara replied grimly. Just power. Fire as soon as you're ready. 2 minutes. It would be close. Arathian vessels are charging weapons. The tactical officer called out, estimated firing range in 1 minute, 40 seconds. On the main view screen, the enemy ships were now visible as more than just points of light, their sleek, predatory forms growing larger by the second. The lead vessel, a heavy cruiser nearly twice the size of anything the Alliance still possessed, was clearly targeting the ARC-72's propulsion systems. Standard Arathian procedure. Disable engines first, then methodically destroy defensive capabilities before boarding with Marine contingents. 1 minute to enemy weapons range. The tactical officer reported, voice wavering slightly. Kara stood at the center of the bridge, outwardly calm, despite the storm of emotions within. If the cannon failed, or if Jun couldn't fire in time, everyone aboard would die or face a fate worse than death. If the cannon worked but caused a containment breach, they would still die, but perhaps more quickly. And if it worked as intended, they would become the first force in the war to deploy a banned weapon of mass destruction. 30 seconds to enemy weapons range. Jun? Kara demanded over the comm. Almost there. He responded, strain evident in every syllable. Singularity is stable. Charging the primary emitter. Arathian vessels locking weapons. Jun, fire now! Kara ordered. Firing sequence initiated. Jun confirmed, brace for energy surge. The lights on the bridge dimmed momentarily as power was diverted to the cannon. A deep, resonant hum built throughout the ship, vibrating through the deck plates and rattling equipment. It was a sound like nothing Kara had ever heard before, as if the very atoms of the ship were singing in harmony. On the tactical display, the Arathian vessels continued their approach, apparently unaware of what was about to happen. Energy surge building, the science officer reported, eyes wide as she stared at her readings. Off the charts. I've never seen anything like it. The humming reached a crescendo, and for a split second, everything seemed to freeze. Then a blinding light erupted from the bow of the ARC-72, a concentrated beam of pure energy that defied conventional physics. The beam struck the lead Arathian cruiser directly, but instead of exploding or breaking apart, the vessel simply flickered, like an image on a faulty screen. It seemed to lose coherence, its outline blurring and shifting before stabilizing again. For a moment, nothing happened. The Arathian ships continued their approach, though they had ceased acceleration. Did it fail? Rael whispered. Before anyone could answer, the sensors erupted with alerts. The Arathian vessels were losing power, their energy signatures fluctuating wildly. Their weapons systems powered down, followed by shields and then life support. But the effect wasn't limited to the enemy fleet. The quantum disruption continued to propagate outward at faster-than-light speeds, creating a spherical wave of energy distortion that swept through the entire Nova Pax system. Commander, the communications officer called out, voice tight with confusion. We're losing all subspace frequencies. Long-range communications are down. Is it the cannon? Kara demanded. I think so. The officer responded. The disruption effect appears to be interfering with all complex energy patterns in the system, not just the Arathian ships, but our communications, the automated defense platforms in orbit around Nova Pax, everything. Kara turned to Rael. Get me, Jun. But the internal communications were affected as well. Only emergency systems, operating on isolated power grids, remained functional. "I need a status report from engineering," Kara ordered. "Send a runner if you have to." As a junior officer hurried from the bridge, Kara returned her attention to the tactical display. The Arathian vessels were now completely dormant, drifting on their previous vector with minimal systems operational. They posed no immediate threat, but more significantly, the long-range sensors showed something unprecedented, a complete absence of the usual background radiation from interstellar communications. The quantum disruption had created a bubble of communication silence that extended far beyond the Nova Pax system. "How far does this effect reach?" Kara asked the science officer. "Impossible to say with certainty." The young woman replied, still staring at her readings in disbelief. "Based on the propagation rate, it could potentially affect a significant portion of this sector." The implications were staggering. If the disruption had indeed spread as far as the science officer suggested, it would affect not just the advance force they had encountered, but the main Arathian battle group as well, and potentially alliance forces in neighboring systems too. The junior officer returned, breathless from running through the emergency stairwells. "Commander, engineering reports the cannon fired successfully. Power systems are stabilizing. Lieutenant Yara—" He hesitated. "Lieutenant Yara suffered severe radiation exposure but is alive. Dr. Naveen is treating her now." "And the singularity?" "Contained, but unstable. Chief Engineer Park recommends against a second firing." Kara nodded. "Not that we could communicate with anyone to fire at," she murmured. The bridge fell into an uneasy silence as the full weight of what they had done settled over them. They had deployed a weapon that had effectively created a zone of technological regression around Nova Pax. No faster-than-light communications, no warp drives, no advanced weapons systems, just the basic technologies that operated on simpler principles. "How long will this effect last?" Kara asked. The science officer shook her head. "Unknown, the theoretical model suggested temporary disruption, but temporary could mean hours or years." Hours passed, and the situation gradually clarified. Emergency power systems throughout the ship were functioning normally, allowing basic life support and internal communications to be restored. The quantum disruption had affected only complex energy patterns associated with advanced technologies, particularly faster-than-light systems and weapons. 72 minutes after the cannon fired, the first subspace frequencies began to clear. As communications were partially restored, a chaotic flood of transmissions poured in from across the sector. Both Alliance and Arathian forces were in disarray, unable to understand what had happened or who was responsible. In the midst of the confusion, something unprecedented occurred. An Arathian diplomatic vessel, operating on minimal power, approached the ARC-72 under a flag of truce. Their message was simple: an immediate cessation of hostilities until the situation could be assessed. Kara met with the Arathian envoy in the ARC-72's conference room, surrounded by her senior staff and security personnel. The envoy, a tall, austere individual named Viscount Therex, regarded her with a mixture of suspicion and reluctant respect. "I am authorized to offer terms," Therex stated without preamble. "The Empire will permit your vessel safe passage to Alliance territory in exchange for information about the weapon you deployed." Kara maintained a neutral expression. "What makes you think we deployed a weapon?" Therex's expression hardened. "Do not insult my intelligence. Commander, our sensors detected an enormous energy surge from your vessel immediately before the disruption began. The correlation is obvious." "And if it was a weapon?" Kara said carefully. "What would prevent us from using it again if your forces continue to pursue us?" "Nothing," Therex admitted. "Which is precisely why I am here. The Empire does not wish to face such a weapon on a larger scale. The disruption has affected our forces across 3 systems. Our fleet is vulnerable." The admission clearly cost the proud Arathian dearly. Kara exchanged glances with Rael, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. This was an unprecedented opportunity. "I propose an alternative," Kara said. "A general ceasefire throughout this sector while representatives from both sides meet to discuss terms for a more permanent peace." Therex's eyes narrowed. "You overstep, Commander. I am authorized to negotiate safe passage for your vessel, not sector-wide diplomatic initiatives." "Then I suggest you contact your superiors," Kara replied evenly, "because I will not discuss the nature of our defensive capability with anyone less than a fully empowered diplomatic delegation." The standoff lasted several tense moments before Therex inclined his head slightly. "I will convey your position to my government." As the Arathian envoy departed, John entered the conference room, his face drawn with exhaustion but his eyes bright with excitement. "Commander, you need to see this," he said, activating the room's holographic display. It showed a real-time sensor sweep of the Nova Pax system. The quantum disruption didn't just affect communications and weapon systems. It created a persistent field effect around the planet itself. The display zoomed in, showing Nova Pax surrounded by a faint, shimmering distortion. "It's a cloaking field," Jun explained. "Not perfect, but significant enough to mask life signs and infrastructure from orbital scans. The Arathians can't target the remaining population even if they wanted to." The news sent a ripple of astonishment through the gathered officers. What had begun as a desperate last stand had somehow transformed into a shield protecting those who had chosen to remain on their home world. "Can they break through it?" Kara asked. Jun shook his head. "Not with any technology I'm familiar with. The field is self-sustaining, drawing energy from the quantum fluctuations the cannon created. It could last for years, possibly decades." As the implications sank in, Rail stepped forward. "Commander, we're receiving transmissions from Alliance High Command. They're confused, to say the least. The communications blackout affected 12 systems, including 3 major fleet staging areas. They're demanding explanations." "And the Arathians?" "Similar confusion in their ranks. From what we can intercept, their command structure is in disarray. Multiple battle groups have lost contact with Central Command and are operating independently, some maintaining aggression, others pulling back to defensive positions." Kara moved to the viewport, gazing out at the stars. For 27 years, the war had ground inexorably onward, consuming lives and worlds in its path. Now, a single act of desperation had created a moment of pause, a 72-minute silence that had somehow disrupted the machinery of conflict. "Send a full report to Alliance High Command," she ordered, "including details of the weapon and its effects, and inform them that I've initiated preliminary ceasefire discussions with an Arathian representative." The looks of shock on her officers' faces would have been amusing under different circumstances. "Is that within your authority, Commander?" Rail asked carefully. "No," Kara admitted, "but neither was firing an outlawed weapon of mass destruction. I seem to be making a habit of exceeding my authority today." The next 48 hours were a whirlwind of diplomatic activity. The initial confusion gave way to cautious negotiations as both sides assessed the implications of what had occurred. The quantum disruption had created a temporary power vacuum in the sector, a space where neither side could effectively project military force, and nature abhors a vacuum. Into this void stepped diplomats who had long been sidelined by military leaders. With conventional warfare temporarily impossible, words became the primary weapons, and subtle diplomatic maneuvers replaced battlefield tactics. Kara found herself at the center of it all. Despite having no formal diplomatic training, the ARC-72, once a desperate evacuation vessel, was transformed into neutral ground where representatives from both sides could meet without fear of treachery. The quantum cannons demonstrated power serving as a deterrent against any thoughts of betrayal. On the third day after the firing of the cannon, Kara received a secure communication from Alliance High Command. The message was brief and to the point. She was to proceed with preliminary peace negotiations, with full diplomatic authority granted retroactively. The strategic situation had shifted dramatically, and the Alliance was seizing the opportunity. "They're legitimizing your actions," Rael observed when Kara shared the news. "Making you their official representative rather than court-martialing you for insubordination." "Pragmatism," Kara replied with a wry smile. "If I succeed, they take credit for a bold diplomatic initiative. If I fail, they can disavow a rogue commander who exceeded her authority." "And the weapon?" Kara's expression sobered. Officially, it doesn't exist. The disruption is being attributed to an experimental defensive system that had unexpected secondary effects. Convenient, Rael murmured. Politics usually is, Kara agreed. But if it leads to peace, I'll accept whatever fiction they want to construct. As the negotiations progressed, Kara found an unexpected ally in Viscount Therex. The Arathian diplomat, initially hostile, gradually revealed himself to be a moderate within the Empire's hierarchy, one who had long advocated for a negotiated settlement, but had been overruled by military hardliners. The war has become self-perpetuating. He confided during a private meeting, "Neither side remembers precisely what we're fighting for anymore, only that we must continue fighting because we have already sacrificed so much." The sunk cost fallacy applied to interstellar warfare, Kara observed. Therex's lips quirked in the Arathian equivalent of a smile. Precisely. But what you've done, what your weapon has done, has created a paradigm shift. For the first time in 27 years, both sides are asking, what if we simply stopped? The simplicity of the question belied its profound implications. Generations had grown up knowing nothing but war. Economies had been restructured around military production. Political systems had evolved to support the conflict. Peace would require not just an end to hostilities, but a fundamental reimagining of society. Meanwhile, Jun and his engineering team continued to study the effects of the quantum cannon. The disruption field around Nova Pax showed no signs of dissipating. If anything, it was growing stronger, creating a sanctuary where the remaining population could rebuild without fear of orbital bombardment. It's as if the cannon somehow tapped into a fundamental aspect of space-time we didn't understand. Jun explained during a briefing. The disruption isn't just affecting technology. It's altering the very fabric of reality in a localized area. Is it dangerous? Kara asked, concerned. Not in the conventional sense. Jun assured her. Life continues normally within the field. Plants grow. Animals thrive. Humans live their lives. But anything relying on advanced energy patterns, weapons, warp drives, certain types of sensors, simply ceases to function. A enforced peace through technological limitation. Rael mused. More than that, Jun replied, his eyes bright with the excitement of discovery. It's a proof of concept. If we can replicate the effect in a controlled manner, we could create zones where war is literally impossible. The implications were staggering and potentially threatening to both powers. A technology that could render advanced weapons useless would dramatically shift the balance of power away from military might and toward more subtle forms of influence. 72 days after the firing of the cannon, representatives from the Alliance and the Arathian Empire gathered on the observation deck of the Arc-72, overlooking Nova Pax. The planet gleamed below them, encased in its protective quantum field, a symbol of what their conflict had nearly destroyed, and what might yet be preserved. Kara stood beside High Chancellor Raymond of the Alliance and Imperial Regent Zor of the Arathian Empire as they prepared to sign the document that had been painstakingly crafted over weeks of intense negotiation. The 72-minute Accord, Chancellor Raymond intoned, using the name that had been given to the agreement in recognition of the period of total communication silence that had precipitated the peace process. A framework for lasting peace between our peoples. Imperial Regent Zor, resplendent in the formal regalia of the Arathian court, regarded the document with a mixture of resignation and relief. Let it be recorded that on this day, reason prevailed over pride, and the future over the past. As the leaders signed, Kara felt a profound sense of unreality. She had spent her entire adult life fighting this war, had lost friends and family to it, had shaped her identity around being a soldier in humanity's greatest conflict. What would she be in peacetime? The question would need to wait. As the formal ceremony concluded, Kara was summoned to a private meeting with Chancellor Raymond. "You've done the impossible, Commander Voss," Raymond said when they were alone. "You've given us a chance at peace when all seemed lost." "Thank you, Chancellor," Kara replied cautiously, sensing there was more to come. "However," Raymond continued, confirming her suspicion, Your methods have created complications. The quantum disruption technology is too powerful to be controlled by any single entity, even our own government. I understand, sir. Do you? Raymond fixed her with a penetrating gaze. Because what I'm about to propose will not be easy for you. The official narrative will be that the disruption was caused by an accidental interaction between an experimental shield system and Nova Pax's unique planetary field. The quantum cannon will not exist in any official record. Kara felt a chill. You're burying the truth. I'm preventing a new arms race. Raymond corrected. If either side believes this technology can be weaponized, our fragile peace will collapse before it begins. Both powers will divert every resource to replicating and countering the effect. And the ARC-72? Kara asked, already suspecting the answer. Will be decommissioned, officially due to critical systems damage sustained during the evacuation. In reality, it will be destroyed to eliminate the evidence. Kara finished for him. Raymond didn't deny it. The ship will be evacuated first, naturally. All personnel will be reassigned, with promotions and commendations, I might add. And what about those who know the truth? My engineering team? The bridge crew? They will be offered positions commensurate with their expertise, positions that will keep them too busy and too well compensated to dwell on past events. Raymond's expression softened slightly. I'm not a monster, Commander. No one will be harmed or threatened. But the truth of what happened here must remain ambiguous. A mystery of war rather than a technological breakthrough. Kara turned to the viewport, looking down at Nova Pax. The shimmering field that protected it was visible even to the naked eye now, a gossamer veil draped over the world like a protective embrace. And what about me? She asked finally. You've become a symbol, Commander. The officer who brought peace after 27 years of war. We can't simply reassign you to some obscure outpost. Raymond stepped beside her, following her gaze to the planet below. I'm offering you a choice. Accept promotion to Admiral and a position on the Defense Council, where you'll help shape our new peacetime military. Or resign your commission and accept appointment as the Alliance's ambassador to Nova Pax. The planet will require a special diplomatic presence due to its unique situation. Someone who understands what happened there. Someone the people trust. The offer took Kara by surprise. You'd let me stay? It serves our interests. Raymond said pragmatically. You'd be visible enough to satisfy the public's fascination with you, but isolated enough that any inconvenient revelations would be easy to contain. Exile disguised as honor. Kara recognized the political maneuver for what it was, yet found herself strangely drawn to the idea. Nova Pax had been saved by what she had done. Perhaps helping to rebuild it could be a form of atonement for the lines she had crossed. I'll need time to consider, she said. Of course, but not too much time. The peace is fragile. Commander, we need to move quickly to solidify it. After Raymond departed, Kara sought out June and Rael. They met in June's makeshift laboratory, where he had been studying data from the quantum disruption field. They're erasing it. Kara told them without preamble. The canon. What really happened. All of it. They're creating a convenient fiction to avoid an arms race. June nodded slowly. I suspected as much. The technology is too disruptive to existing power structures. What will you do? Rael asked. Kara hesitated. Raymond offered me two choices, advancement within the military hierarchy or ambassadorship to Nova Pax. A gilded cage either way, Rael observed. Yes, but one with a view I might actually enjoy. Kara managed a small smile. What about you two? Have you received your reassignment offers? Jun gestured to his laboratory. Advanced Research Division, they want me studying anomalous energy phenomena, without ever mentioning the canon, of course. Diplomatic Intelligence Corps for me. Rael said, apparently my experience with Arathian communications makes me valuable in the new era of peaceful engagement. Silence fell as they contemplated their futures. They had survived when so many others hadn't. They had helped end a war that had consumed a generation. Yet victory, if it could be called that, felt hollow in the face of political expediency. "I'm going to document everything," Rael said suddenly. "Not for publication, not yet, but for history. The truth of what happened here shouldn't be lost, even if it needs to remain hidden for now." "A chronicle of the 72 minutes that changed everything," Jun mused. "The day the cannons fell silent," Kara added softly. 1 month later, Kara stood on the surface of Nova Pax for the first time. The quantum disruption field was invisible from within, but its effects were evident in the peaceful sky above, free from the orbital weapons platforms and warships that had been fixtures for decades. The Ark-72 had been evacuated as promised, its 17,000 refugees gradually relocated to Alliance worlds or, for those who chose it, back to Nova Pax. The ship itself had suffered a catastrophic power core breach during a final inspection, or so the official report stated. In reality, Kara suspected it had been methodically dismantled and destroyed, the quantum cannon's secrets scattered to the stars. As the newly appointed ambassador, Kara had been given a residence on the outskirts of what remained of the capital city. From her terrace, she could see both the scars of war and the first tentative signs of rebuilding. Construction crews worked among the ruins, salvaging what could be saved and clearing what could not. Jun had surprised everyone by requesting assignment to Nova Pax's reconstruction effort rather than the prestigious research position he had been offered. "I've spent enough time studying destruction," he had explained. "I'd like to try creation for a change." He had established a technology reclamation center in the heart of the city, developing simpler but effective alternatives to the advanced systems rendered useless by the disruption field. His innovations were already spreading throughout the recovering community: water purification systems, medical equipment, communications networks that operated on principles the field didn't affect. Rael had accepted her position in the Diplomatic Intelligence Corps, but had arranged to be stationed on Nova Pax as part of the ambassador's staff. In her spare time, she meticulously documented everything about the quantum cannon and its effects, creating an archive that would remain sealed until long after they were gone. For when humanity is wise enough to handle the truth, she had said. As twilight fell, Kara watched the first stars appear in the sky. Somewhere up there, Alliance and Arathian diplomats continued the delicate work of transforming a temporary ceasefire into a lasting peace. Military forces from both sides were gradually withdrawing from contested systems, resources were being redirected toward reconstruction, and prisoners of war were being repatriated. It was still fragile, this peace they had stumbled into. Old hatreds and suspicions wouldn't disappear overnight. The economic and social transformations required would cause pain and resistance. There would be those on both sides who preferred the certainties of conflict to the uncertainties of coexistence. But for the first time in 27 years, there was hope, born in a desperate moment when the last colony ship had fired its cannons and the Galactic War had ended in 72 minutes of profound silence. Kara didn't know if she deserved the peace she now enjoyed, if the ends truly justified the means she had employed. Those questions would haunt her for years to come, but as she watched Nova Pax's twin moons rise over the healing landscape, she allowed herself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, they had found a better way forward from the ashes of the past. "Ambassador," Jun's voice called from inside the residence. "The council is waiting to begin the evening session." Kara took one last look at the stars. "Coming," she replied, turning away from the view. The past was written, for better or worse. Now it was time to help write the future.